In the early days of the Santa Fe trade, Americans came to realize that the mules bred in New Mexico, the offspring of a mare and a jack, were unlike any they had seen before. These Mexican mules had a reputation for toughness. They carried heavy loads, endured long stretches with little grass or water, and their iron-hard hooves held up against the sharp, rocky ground. More than that, they had a certain instinctive cleverness, a mix of caution, stubbornness, and intelligence that made them far less likely than horses to press on into danger. People often said a mule had more horse sense than a horse. A mule won't willingly put itself in harm's way, while a horse might blunder into trouble. If you trust a mule, chances are you'll stay safe, because the animal refuses to do anything that might get it injured. Horses, unless they're older and well-trained, simply don't have that kind of built-in judgment. But mules seem to be born with it. Mules proved tougher than horses and could handle longer stagecoach runs, especially in country where way stations were few and far between. Horses might be faster and flashier, but they demanded more care, grain, hay, and steady pampering to keep their high-strung energy. Mules, on the other hand, were hardy and self-sufficient. Missouri became a hub for the mule trade, and from there these animals spread across the Santa Fe Trail and much of the West after the Civil War, carrying loads and pulling wagons where horses would have worn out. Mules had been used in the East since colonial days, but the Mexican-bred mule was smaller, usually 11 to 13 hands tall and weighing no more than 700 to 800 pounds. Even so, they covered ground steadily. A mule-drawn wagon train could average 15 to 25 miles a day, moving along at 3 to 4 miles an hour, the same pace as horses. Stagecoaches pulled by big mules could push 6 to 10 miles per hour on flat, dry ground, outpacing horses that usually topped out around 5 miles per hour. During the Indian Wars in the Southwest, mules showed just how durable they were. General George Crook became famous for relying on his pack mules, which gave his soldiers the ability to stay in the field for weeks or even months without supply lines slowing them down. As time went on, new bloodlines were brought in, and Missouri farmers quickly became skilled breeders. The first European jack to reach Missouri came from Malta in the late 1830s. Not long after, the Kentucky Mammoth Jack was introduced and crossed with the local stock. This careful breeding produced the legendary Missouri Mule, a tough, dependable animal that would earn its place in history. By the 1840s, as settlers pushed west from the eastern states, the mule had already become the favorite pack animal. Even back in the days of Spanish rule in the Southwest, when horses, burros, llamas, dogs, and even camels were tried, the Mexican mule had been the animal of choice. Before long, though, the Mexican strain gave way to the American mule, with most of the finest stock coming straight out of Missouri. Along the historic Old Spanish Trail, which linked Santa Fe to Los Angeles, mule trains carried loads between 1829 and 1849, most often hauling New Mexico's prized woolen goods. In many cases, fine wool products were even traded directly for strong, reliable mules. The trail stretched some 2,700 miles, making it the longest, roughest, and most winding pack route in American history. The very first party to make the trek counted about 60 men and 100 mules. On the wagon trains that rolled across the plains, mules often outperformed other animals. A mule-drawn train could cover nearly 30 miles in a day, while wagons pulled by horses or oxen usually managed just 5. Thousands of mules helped carry pioneers westward. When families finally chose a spot to settle, it was the mules that dragged the logs to raise their new homes. Stagecoach lines also put their trust in mules. The larger stock could haul coaches 6 to 10 miles per hour across flat, dry country. In towns all over the West, mules were hitched to fire wagons and other heavy equipment. Many frontier towns even planned their streets wide enough for big mule teams to turn around with ease. Western explorers and trailmen understood the value of a good mule and the need to treat it right. Picking out the right mule, some said, took more thought than picking a wife. And once chosen, a man's survival could depend on that animal. One old mountaineer advised travelers to live like a partner on the trail with your mule. During the Indian Wars in the Southwest, mules proved their worth with feats of endurance that stunned even hardened soldiers. In 1882, scouts left the San Carlos Agency in Arizona with a train of pack mules, each loaded with 200 pounds. In just 3 days, one mule covered 280 miles. Another train made 108 miles in only 16 hours, while a third braved scorching desert heat to push through 85 miles in 12 hours. General George Crook, by the late 1870s, had no doubt about the mule's superiority. He rode his favorite mule, Apache, and repeatedly emphasized that the Army's success often rested on the strength of its pack animals. Crook's mules carried double the Army's recommended loads because he demanded the best gear for the best animals, with each pack saddle fitted to the individual mule. Thanks to that care, Crook's troops never lacked ammunition. His mule trains always got through. The mule took the best traits from both parents. From its horse mother came speed and strength, while from the jackass father it gained intelligence, sharp instincts, wider vision, long ears that shed heat in the desert, and smaller, tougher hooves that made it steady on rough ground. Donkeys had evolved in rocky, dry country, while horses came from the open plains. A frightened horse's instinct was to bolt, while a donkey's instinct was to stop, think, and decide whether to fight or flee. That caution, born of centuries of survival in hard country, made the donkey the wiser of the two. And he passed that wisdom to his hybrid offspring, the mule. What many call mule stubbornness is really caution and self-preservation. A mule won't willingly put itself in danger, and that means it won't put its rider in danger either. The result of this genetic mix was a hard-headed, hard-working animal, the mule, and the men who rode them were all the better for it.